Welcome back to the Wall Street Podcast. Today, we're conducting a deep dive into a significant development in satellite communications. We're looking at a recent Morgan Stanley research report.
That's right. The report's called SpaceX EchoStar Spectrum Deal, a game changer for satellite communications. It came out September 9th, 2025, and it really digs into SpaceX buying, well, $17 billion worth of spectrum from EchoStar.
$17 billion, that's a serious number.
It is. The report looks at what this means telecom sector implications.
Okay, let's get into the specifics of the deal itself. The $17 billion. How does that break down?
Well, according to the report, it's structured as up to $8.5 billion in SpaceX stock. That represents about a 2% stake, assuming a $400 billion valuation for SpaceX.
Right, and the other half.
Up to another $8.5 billion in cash. Plus, there's an extra $2 billion factored in for aggregate cash interest payments on EchoStar's debt running through November 2027.
And what spectrum does SpaceX actually get for this?
They're getting EchoStar's 50 megahertz of S-band spectrum in the U.S. That's the AWS-4 and PCSH bands. And crucially, it also includes EchoStar's global spectrum licenses, too.
Global licenses. Okay, so this is clearly aimed at boosting Starlink's direct-to-cell capabilities.
Exactly. The report projects that this spectrum, combined with their next-gen DTC satellites, could boost Starlink's DTC network capacity by over 100 times.
Over 100x. That's a huge leap. What does that mean in practice?
It means moving towards full 5G cellular connectivity. So think standard voice, data, maybe even video, directly to a regular smartphone, which is a big step up from the current service, right?
Wow.
Which is mostly just basic messaging, maybe X, WhatsApp, some mapping apps.
And where is Starlink DTC now in terms of scale?
Well, the report notes only about 655 of Starlink's roughly 8,400 satellites are DTC capable at the moment, serving over 6 million users globally, but with those limited capabilities we just mentioned.
So Morgan Stanley's take on the competition aspect.
Yeah.
Does this 50 megahertz make Starlink a direct threat to U.S. carriers like Verizon or AT&T?
Their analysis suggests, well, not quite directly, especially not everywhere. While 50 megahertz is definitely significant, it's still just a fraction of what the major carriers hold. They operate with something like 230 to 330 megahertz.
A fraction.
Okay. So the conclusion is that this amount of spectrum probably isn't enough for Starlink to compete head-on in, say, dense urban or suburban markets. And you have to consider the sheer cost of becoming a carrier. Marketing, distribution. EchoStar's own experience with Boost Mobile really highlights this.
Right, the report mentioned that. Huge investments, wasn't it?
Massive. Something like $30 billion in spectrum, another $10 billion in network capex, and they still absorbed about $6 billion in operating losses. It's a tough business to enter from scratch.
Which likely explains SpaceX's stated strategy then. They're emphasizing partnership.
Precisely. They've said their second-gen network will be used in partnership with mobile network operators to augment high-capacity terrestrial 5G networks. It lets them avoid that massive capital outlay of building a carrier brand and infrastructure, essentially leveraging the satellite network through existing MNOs.
Okay, let's dig into that a bit. With this projected 100x capacity increase and the 5G goal, even with the partnership model, is Starlink DTC now positioned, maybe indirectly, to compete more strongly? Or is it purely augmentation?
Yeah, it's a nuanced picture. The report suggests it's less about direct competition for, your average city user, and more about becoming an indispensable partner. That 50 megahertz isn't enough bandwidth to replace terrestrial networks where they're strong, but it's very powerful for filling coverage gaps, rural areas, emergency situations. It makes Starlink a much more attractive, almost necessary complement.
Right, so it strengthens their hands significantly. Which brings us to the partnership angle itself. How does actually owning this spectrum, rather than relying on partner spectrum, shift Starlink's leverage in negotiations with those global MNOs they already work with?
That's key. It fundamentally changes the dynamic. Owning the spectrum significantly reduces Starlink's dependence on those MNOs for the actual airwaves needed for DTC. This improves their unit economics, obviously. But more strategically, it creates a strong incentive for partners like T-Mobile, Optus, Rogers, and others to keep collaborating.
Because the alternative is?
The alternative, or the implicit risk, is that SpaceX, now equipped with its own spectrum, could potentially decide to go it alone more aggressively down the line if partnerships don't work out favorably. It makes SpaceX a more formidable potential competitor, even if their stated goal is partnership now. So it really poses the question, how will these MNOs adjust their strategies going forward?
Okay, fascinating strategic implications.
Yeah.
But let's bring it down to the ground level. Forget the billions and the corporate strategy for a moment. What's the practical impact of this deal for the average person using a cell phone? For global connectivity?
The big promise here is ubiquitous connectivity for standard phones. We're talking LTE smartphones accessing voice and data services literally anywhere on Earth. No need for special satellite phones or hardware modifications. It moves far beyond just sending an SOS message. Think reliable service in remote national parks, during natural disasters when cell towers are down, seamless connection when traveling internationally. It fundamentally changes the expectation of mobile service being tied to terrestrial infrastructure.
So connectivity becomes truly global, potentially.
That's the vision. More resilient, more available. It could reshape how we think about being connected. And thinking longer term, consider how this move by SpaceX, acquiring direct capability but still pushing partnership, might speed up the merging of satellite and terrestrial networks. It could redefine what a local cell tower even means and set a whole new standard for global communication infrastructure.